Greetings everyone, this is Connor from Dagora TV, and in this video we're going to be talking about all the recent leaks that have come out for Bethesda, or supposed leaks that have come out for Bethesda on NeoGAF over the past few days. I mean, fucking hell guys, we've got a lot to talk about in this video. I mean, we've got so many leaks really that have, or supposed leaks that have come out over the NeoGAF forums. There were a couple of posts which I actually saw on the Elder Scrolls subreddit, which was actually put up on by a user on there. We've got a screenshot of all the posts from that thread, basically, where a guy who says that basically he works at Bethesda, as you do, and basically started leaking information. There's some stuff in here that I do believe, and there's some stuff in here that you know, I truly don't believe, to be honest with you. I think there's some stuff in here that is quite frankly bullshit and definitely subject to change. Again, as well, you know, this is a leaking strong quotation marks where, you know, there is times, you know, obviously when these leaks are actually true. Like we had a very similar situation to this before Fallout 4 where, you know, they said the game was going to be set in Boston. They said the game is going to have an updated version of the creation engine and stuff like that. Going to have a voice protagonist, all that stuff. I'm going to have the actors that they had in the game and everything. Jennifer Grey, I think, was Jennifer Hale. Sorry, not Jennifer Grey. Jesus, Jennifer Hale was one of the people. So it was mostly right. There was obviously a couple of stuff in there that was wrong, and it is known for, you know, this kind of stuff to happen to Bethesda and game companies where this stuff is actually true. There's also countless amount of times when people, you know, just pop out and say stuff that's just completely bullshit. But there is stuff in here that does go in line, you know, with some of the stuff that we talked about before, but let's go into it anyway, because there's a hell of a lot to discuss, basically. There's two separate leaks, basically. One of them, well, one of them isn't a leak, actually. One of them's a job advert on the ZenMax website, which we can kind of cipher, which I'll talk about at the very end, because we've got way more interesting stuff to talk about first, in my opinion. So I was kind of toying with myself, kind of how to go about this. Do I go about this, you know, in kind of release of game order, kind of how we're expecting, in the kind of the chronological order of how I saw the post, but I thought I'd go in release order of the timeline of release of how we're expecting these games to come out. So let's start off with Starfield. Starfield's obviously not been announced, not been officially confirmed to be in development by Bethesda or anything like that, but we're 99.9% sure that it's going to be happening this E3. If you don't really know what it is, it's going to be a game, space style, you know, RPG kind of in the future. Basically, well, we thought space style, maybe it's not going to be. We're going to see some more about that. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's basically going to be been kind of toyed to be kind of like a Fallout style Bethesda game into more of the future, with, you know, kind of space stuff kind of happening around it with guns and things like that and all that cool stuff. A space game basically for Bethesda. But it seems that there's going to be a bit more to it than that as well, because there's actually going to be, according to this leak, I'll go in now into the posts and some of the information that we got from it, is that it's also going to have a post-apocalyptic New York and some surrounding areas around it as well, which is going to reintroduce the skill system that we had from Fallout 4, which is something that I think we can assume, you know. So like if you're comparing, you know, the skill systems across the Bethesda Game Studios games in particular, because these are most of this information is to Bethesda Game Studios. The skill system in quality went up and up and up and up and up all the way to Skyrim, in my opinion. Some people say maybe took a down step after Morrowind, but because the game became more casual, because, you know, it had the real strong RPG mechanics with the dice roll. You know, you can really feel your skills improving. But we kind of went a little bit back to that system with Skyrim, but without the dice roll. But, you know, you can really feel the improvement in your weapons and stuff as your skills increase. Which was really cool to see, and it kind of improved as well from, you know, Fallout 3 to Oblivion as well. Kind of got more kind of tighter and more in tune, and then we had the epic amount of skills and perk choices that we had in Skyrim, and then we got the system, you know, still had the special system that we had from Fallout 3 but in Fallout 4, and a lot of skills to go down it, but we kind of had a bit more of a kind of like a tree format, not a tree, but kind of like line grass, and we kind of had to force ourselves to go down to get different skills later on, you know, and it didn't really give that many of the kind of really meant our skills matter, to be honest with you. You could basically do the whole game without putting a point into a skill, which was, you know, a good thing in a way, you know, that you can completely ignore them, but I never got excited to put a point in the skill tree. You know, in Skyrim, the first time you got your point and you looked at the stars and you saw all the different branching skill trees and stuff, it was so cool to, you know, to get that moment, you know, just to think, where the fuck am I going to put this single point when I've got all these choices to make? And, you know, in Fallout we didn't really get that. I didn't think anyway, Fallout 4. So completely reintroducing the skill system is something I think is a good idea as well. Revamping the dialogue system as well, much needed after the whole dialogue system debacle with Fallout 4. not really gone down too well. I know a couple of people that liked it, and to make it a bit more easy to make choices in dialogue and stuff like that. For the grand majority of Bethesda fans, they didn't like it, so they want it to be more like New Vegas, actually, where, you know, you get a lot of dialogue options and stuff like that, but it's obviously not a voice-acted protagonist, which I think we can assume is true. Judging by what Todd Howard said in an interview, I think with actually Daniel Dwyer on the GameSpot stage at E3 this past year, where he talked about Fallout VR and things like that. The first thing Todd Howard jumped to when he was asked about criticisms was the dialogue system, so it definitely is something that is going to change from this next game. It's not going to be similar to what it was like in Fallout 4, so we'll definitely have to see how that is going to be like. Starfield is also going to feature augmentations, so it's going to basically like have a dystopian cyberpunk mini-city in the game as well, which is going to be near New York. I think it's going to go into a bit of this. I'm going to go into a bit later on in the video, where they're talking about, you know, they kind of want the universes to interconnect between Fallout and Starfield. So the world of Earth is going to be very much, you know, under nuclear bomb. You know, it's going to be completely broken down. We're going to be like Fallout, kind of like setting with that kind of area as well. But we're going to have this kind of dystopian cyberpunk mini-city that's going to be completely untouched by the war that's happening in the game and happened beforehand. And, you know, we're going to have like basically like flying cars and shit like that. They actually apparently originally wanted to do this in Fallout 4, which I actually saw in a post. Actually, this kind of goes in conjunction with the post I actually saw a month after Fallout 4 came out. I think it was actually put up by GameSpot. I'll go and try and find that actually. But basically, it said the same thing, that they wanted it like an area that was basically untouched by the war, and a little bit like the green zone in New Vegas that we got, but completely a bit more different. You know, technology kind of improved, but they couldn't really find a way to do it. Whereas with Starfield, apparently they have, that they're going to have a couple maybe of augmentations in the game and stuff like that. It's going to be interesting to see. They're going to go down the road of companions as well, which I actually think they greatly improved from Skyrim to Fallout 4. Skyrim was like an area where they introduced the new idea of companions that we get around with, but they were just fucking retarded. And then Fallout 4, they actually improved and they had a bit more character. We actually started to like these people a bit more. So they're going to have 12 well-designed companions, which is actually really narrowing it down of what we got in Skyrim and Fallout 4. And having them well-designed and having backstories and stuff like that is going to be interesting. All of which as well can be romanced by your character. And actually, these ones I actually believe. The ones about Starfield, most of them I actually believe, to be honest with you. Because I feel like there's more set in stone with that area. Like, if this guy is from Bethesda, he's either done his research well, and he's actually got some really kind of in-line predictions with the research that they've got. He's not this kind of person like, oh, I work at Bethesda, and this guy told me that, you know, oh, I've got a friend at Bethesda, and he told me that this game's going to have, you know, giant dinosaurs and stuff like that. No, it's actually going in line well with what we kind of think the game's going to be and some of the other stuff that's come out about it. So it's this kind of stuff about Starfield which is kind of really making me think maybe some of this is true. But yeah, like I said, they're all going to be romanced as well. It's going to feature alien prostitutes as well, which is, you know, obviously great, as we can imagine. Getting on some humanoid versus alien action in there. The game's also going to feature 5 separate main story quest lines depending on which faction you join. So it's going down that idea of faction gameplay, which is really popular with Bethesda Game Studios games. Even with, you know, the games published by Bethesda in a way, the factions are really popular on them. Like in, you know, we know the ones in Skyrim, you got Thieves Guild, Mages Guild, Fighters Guild, Dark Brotherhood, stuff like that. You know, and then you've got the Brotherhood of Steel and all them kind of people, and the Fallout games as well, which are going to be able to, you know, to join. And if you want to be a complete loner in the quest line as well, there's a quest line say for that if you don't join any of the factions, which is something that I actually would really enjoy if that's the case, you know, because on a separate playthrough, if I feel like, you know what, these guys, I don't really agree with any of these motherfuckers, I'm going to do this on my own and try and combat the main story this way. We'll see how that plays out. I like the idea of that being in there. So really there's kind of 6 separate main story quest lines. I don't really see how different they're going to be from each other. Is it going to be like the Skyrim Civil War situation where the Imperials are pretty much the same quest line as the Stormcloaks? You just talk to different people. Is it going to be like that situation? Or is it going to be, you know, like you do different stuff, you go to different places and things like that, which will be really interesting to see. So let's get into races of Starfield. I mean, jeez, this is going to be a long video. The races of Starfield are going to include humans, robot-like races, and the race looks somewhat like Elfish and acts as kind of like a precursor to the elves in Elder Scrolls. I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll go on that tangent in a little bit later on in the video. They kind of want, you know, connected universes to be a thing. They don't want it to be obvious. We'll talk about that in a second again. I'll go in that later down the line. The game is going to mainly feature guns. That's what it's going to go down. We can imagine that. You know, if it's going to be set you know, after the Fallout games, and it's going to have, you know, in this kind of space area, it's going to be a bit more of a first-person shooter, kind of go down that route, or third-person, whichever way you'd like to play. But it will have some weapons similar to lightsabers. Obviously, you can use melee in Fallout. You know, that was something that was... Some people use it, some people... You know, I remember watching Stripping's playthrough of Fallout, where he basically played as One Punch Man. He just go around punching people in the game and stuff, and that's how he played. And, you know, always having that freedom to do that is going to be really, really cool. But lightsabers... Seems like something they're going to have weapons similar to that, because apparently in its conceptual stage, this is the point I actually truly believe. You know, a lot of people actually discredit in this point. I actually think it's very much going to be true, because apparently, you know, the guys over at Star Wars, LucasArts, before they were bought by Disney, actually was in talks with Bethesda to do a Star Wars game, another Star Wars RPG, which I personally believe, because, you know, this was after the time, you know, they did Oblivion, they just did Fallout 3, so it very much was possible, you know, for people to kind of go to Bethesda and ask them about it. Obviously not as talked about as the Game of Thrones, as the HBO, or not HBO, sorry, but the guys from A Song of Ice and Fire going over to talk to them to do a game, but it, you know, they definitely was one, you know, to go over and talk about a Star Wars game. But yeah, it changed basically after Disney bought LucasArts, and this idea was completely scrapped. But the conceptual stage of basically a Star Wars game was basically there, and they changed it to the Starfield, built up their own universe around it and things like that. And I personally believe that. I think that's a very much a possible thing to have happened. You know, I think we'll maybe be able to draw some more similarities once the game comes out, and be able to see more of the game and be able to see some of the similarities between Starfield and a Star Wars-like universe. But we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that. The game, however, will not be on a new engine, which a lot of people will be signing out. It's going to be on a dramatically updated version of the Creation Engine, and they basically, there's a little bit of a discussion about this between the leaker himself and also the a couple of the people in the GameFAQs area, which were basically complaining about this, saying this is actually ridiculous why they're not updating their own engine, but going for an updated version of the Creation Engine, which they did for Fallout 4. The guy said that Fallout 4 was the most stable game that they had in Bethesda Game Studios game. I don't think that's something to be actually proud of for Bethesda. Fallout 4 ran like a piece of shit, and, you know, there's a lot of bugs in that game, way too many bugs. So they really do need to tighten that up. If it is dramatically updated, then we'll see how that is. But, you know, they said they wanted to keep this, to keep the modding community, which is actually what some people commented on some of my videos when I talked about a new engine for the Elder Scrolls 6, the next Bethesda Game Studios game. That they needed a new engine to kind of help with you know, the bugs and everything. People were commenting saying that they wanted to keep the modding community, you know, keep it strong, keep it stable in there, and keep it as a huge part of the Elder Scrolls series and the Bethesda Game Studios community. And keeping the Creation Engine and upgrading it is going to be able to maintain that, because they've got really great modders in their community. The next thing we'll go to, well, I'll actually talk about the timeline of release, what they said first, before we go into the next 3 projects, because the next 3 are not going to be as much as Starfield. There's a lot more Starfield than the rest of it, which is another reason why I kind of maybe believe this a little bit more than I should. I was actually, as soon as the first time I read this, I was like, a lot of this is bullshit. But then, as I kind of went into it a bit more in depth of going into it and doing a bit more studying over it all, some of it could be true. You know, it is one of those situations. But, again, it's one of those things we'll see in the future, whether it is or not. It's fun to talk about, though, if it is. So the timeline of release that the guy said was, this is something that I actually think is bullshit, and I'll talk about a bit more after I said it. They say that Starfield is going to be 2017. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's definitely going to happen. They say that 2020 is going to be a Game of Thrones project. They say that 2023, 3 years after the previous one, is going to be the Elder Scrolls 6. So that's 6 years from now. Then 2025 is going to be a Fallout project, presumably Fallout 5. And then 5 years after that, 2030, will be the Elder Scrolls 7. So, lot to dissect there. A few reasons why I think this is bullshit, personally. No ideas in here for Starfield 2, if anything like that, if anything's successful. So, obviously, you know, all these games in here, if they are true, is going to be, you know, subject to change, you know, and everything of what could be happening in the future. Starfield could be this absolute huge mammoth success, you know, game with GTA 5 style success, selling 100 million copies and all that stuff, and being an absolute groundbreaking success for the company, and obviously throw a Starfield 2 in there. But the biggest reason why I think this release schedule is bullshit is because of what Todd Howard said a few times in his interviews. He said this in interviews, I think in every interview he's done now, since they've announced that Fallout 4's finished, they said you can expect to see more of them. You know, you can expect to see more Bethesda Game Studios releasing stuff on a more regular basis, and this timeline of release completely contradicts that. And Bethesda Game Studios are the kind of company to say that kind of thing if they're not going to be true about it. You know, they're not going to be like, yeah, I expect to see us more regularly, if they're going to carry on releasing games as infrequent as this, really. They expanded the studio as well to kind of deal with the heavy workload of what they've got coming out as well. So I'm going to be honest, I don't actually believe this timeline release. I actually think the Game of Thrones project is going to be happening. I think it's going to be 1 to 2 years after Starfield. So that means it's 2018 or 2019, which, yeah, is just a year before what they say, 2020. But I personally, if I'm going to actually nail down and really have a ballsy prediction, I personally believe it's going to be coming in 2018, if I'm going to be honest. I think they're going to whip it out in 2018 and surprise everyone and kind of go in conjunction with the last series of Game of Thrones. That's what I personally believe. I just think that because of how they go, to really stress the point of how they're going to be more regular. And I may be living in the fantasy of having a Bethesda Game Studios, 2 AAA Bethesda Game Studios games out in 2 years. I just believe that's going to be the case. Maybe it could be, you know, not a holiday release in 2019, but it could be early 2019. That is very, very possible as well. I just personally think that it's going to be 2018. That's what I think. I may be really, really unpopular in that opinion. Let me know what you think if it's going to be 2018, but I don't think it's going to be 3 years after. And then again for another 3 years after The Elder Scrolls 6, which they have confirmed to be working on. You know, maybe they took a break from it, you know, to really kind of go into crunch time on Starfield. Where Pete Hines said in a tweet they're not working on it right now, but Todd Howard says that they're working on it in a couple of interviews, that they said, yeah, they're working on The Elder Scrolls 6. Pre-production's finished for that game, and they says they're waiting for new tech to kind of push that game forward more, which we predicted to be a new engine. May not be the case. Maybe something that is going to be coming as a launch lineup of the PlayStation 5 or the new Xbox or something like that. I don't think that's going to be true either, though. I think that game is going to be 2020 or 2021. Personally, I'm going to go down the line of 2020 of when I think that game's going to be. But if Game of Thrones project is 2019, I can see that being pushed to 2021. I don't think it's going to be as late as 2023. Again, I'm going with the philosophy that these games are going to be more regular. A lot of people are saying, you know, that this is going to be true because, you know, they want it to be, you know, they don't want it, sorry, but they think it's going to go down that typical Bethesda thing of taking really long development cycles. But since Fallout 4 came out, well, even towards the end of Fallout 4, they doubled the size of their Rockville, Maryland studio and completely shot up the size of that and, you know, really increased the productivity. And they also opened a new studio in Canada, you know, in Montreal, where they basically, over the course of time, 3 times the size of the team, basically. So they've definitely been able to whip out a lot more Bethesda Game Studios games. So I don't think we're going to have that problem of 5-year development cycles like we've had in the past. And, well, you know, being able to go down this route of maybe getting more regular games out of them. And I truly believe him when he says that. 2025 of the Fallout project, I think, again, then bring that forward a year or two with what they've said, you know, in the past of what they want it to be, you know, with Fallout 5, you know, being able to get this regular thing. But then having the big gap of 4 to 5 years of The Elder Scrolls 7, I'm not even going to comment on if if I want it to be like what it says in this leak of The Elder Scrolls 7. We'll go into that in a second. Then it could be, you know, a huge 5-year wait after the Fallout project, but I don't think it's going to be that. Personally, I think it's going to be, you know, something completely. I think it could be maybe a bit more regular. I'm not even going to go into that. We'll talk because it's so far away, you know. But let's go into, you know, the rest of the leaks. Let's go into the Game of Thrones project. Basically, he didn't have much to say about the Game of Thrones project. He just said that there's been a secret partnership with HBO for a Game of Thrones game. I did a video about this. If you want to go and have a look at some of the ideas that I had for that of a Game of Thrones game, it's actually been Googled. Is that my views on that video have actually shot up over the past few days because of these leaks. So go ahead and check that video if you want to go and have a look about that. I do think that's going to be happening. Like I said, 2018 is when I think it's going to be. Let me know when you think. I do like the idea of it being that it works well with some of the stuff that's happened in the past. So let's get into the meat and bones of this channel in particular. The Elder Scrolls 6 in the Elder Scrolls 7. The Elder Scrolls 7, Christ, it doesn't even think about. You know, it doesn't even want to. I don't even want to think about the Elder Scrolls 7 right now because it seems so long away in my eyes. But the Elder Scrolls 6. So let's talk about some of the stuff. Some of the stuff in the news about this, I actually don't really like personally, to be honest with you. But let's get into it anyway. So the first groundbreaking bit of news here is from this leak is that the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to take place on Akavir. and called Elder Scrolls Akavir, with the V and I in Akavir being put in capitals to make it look like the Elder Scrolls 6. Very good for marketing purposes, and possibly true for marketing purposes. I think it's a great, you know, it really works, you know, for the title. Like kind of how, you know, when they did the, you know, the whole thing, 11-11-11 was really good for marketing purposes there as well. But Akavir is the home of the dragons, and if you don't know what Akavir is, if you're really kind of new to the Elder Scrolls lore, it is completely off the continent of Tamriel. It's the same planet of Nirn, but it is the continent to the east. The Akaviris are the kind of people that, you know, we always hearing about in the Elder Scrolls universe, of regular invasions in the past, of what we get, you know, Akaviri warriors, and actually some people that we've actually seen in the Elder Scrolls Online a couple of times in a couple of quests there. But overall, Akavir as a continent is very mysterious. It's kind of like how Pandaria is if you're a Dishonored fan. Very mysterious. A lot of crazy stuff goes on there. We know it's the home of the dragons, and we know some of the things that have actually been announced to be in the game, you know, if it were not been announced. None of this is official. None of this is official. They've said in the league to be in the game. But Akavir is what it says to be as the next Elder Scrolls game, which is a lot of what people want, and to be for the Elder Scrolls 6 release, you know, that's where they want it to be. I personally am not that kind of person. I don't want it to be in Akavir. I like the mystery of Akavir. It'd be really cool for it to be over there. You know, personally, I'd be happy for it to be anywhere. They can make a great game anywhere. I'd be happy. But Akavir is probably actually at the bottom of where I want the game to be set. Personally, you know, but maybe above all the other continents of what we've heard of. Maybe behind Almerit actually. But anyway, the reason for that is being because I like Tamriel a lot. I think there's a lot to be explored at Tamriel. I don't want to jump over to Akavir until we've explored all of Tamriel, and I want it to be explored in the beautiful, luscious Bethesda Game Studios in-depth nature. I don't want it to be in the type of, you know, the Elder Scrolls Online way. You know, I don't want it to be, you know, these kind of, you know, MMO put together worlds, because, you know, I know we can go over there and have a look at them, but I want to see it in the way of the Bethesda Game Studio style. You know, I want to see it in that way, and being able to have it of, you know, seeing all of Tamriel is an Elder Scrolls fan's wet dream. You know, that's being able to see all of it, being able to explore all of it, and we haven't done that yet. I don't want to go over to Akavir until we've done that, and that is maybe a really nerdy thing kicking inside of me, to be able to see all these areas before we go over there, but that's a personal thing. I don't want to see all of Akavir before I've seen all of Tamriel. It's a personal thing. We'll see if it's true. It works in line with the market and everything. But anyway, a lot of what they say kind of lines up with what... So let's presume it's true for now. Let's presume the Elder Scrolls Akavir is going to be the Elder Scrolls 6. It's going to be set in Akavir. Apparently it's going to be the biggest Bethesda game yet, which you can presume, you know, with every new one that's coming out, to be the biggest one yet. And, you know, obviously on a new continent, you expect it to be bigger than anything that we had before, when it's just in one province. And Akavir, if you look on the map, is pretty comparable in size of Tamriel, maybe a little bit smaller. It's going to feature an advanced version of the settlement system. Again, something that we can assume. This is something that they built upon throughout the Bethesda Game Studios games, kind of introducing in Hearthfire, being able to build your own home, then being able to build your own settlement in Fallout 4, which, even though I didn't toy around with much, been very, very popular in the community. People have been making some crazy shit on with the Fallout 4 settlements and maintaining them. I found it a bit of annoyance, you know, hearing Preston come up to me over and over again. But it's okay, I can have this in there, and something that I can, you know, just ignore. The way you start the game is obviously as a prisoner. Sent on an Imperial colonial ship over to Akavir. Sounds kind of true to me. Sounds like an obvious way that they do it, you know, being able to send there to this wacky new continent. And obviously being able to recapture that alien feeling of Morrowind would be something that really cool and really excites me. The game will also feature 4 new races, and it's not sure if it's actually going to be playable or not, where you basically, the first of them is going to be the first Asian race in the game, is going to be basically centered around the medieval Japanese people. We don't know what they're going to be called. It's also going to have a monkey-type humanoid race. I presume this is going to be the Tangmo. This is something that we've read about, of a monkey-type race over in Akavir. I suppose it's going to be like that. And the third, they said it's not going to be... They're not sure if it's ever going to be a snake race or a parasitical race. I presume this is going to be the Slowed. And the fourth race is going to be a humanoid tiger race. They're not sure if these are going to be playable or not. I hope they are. I don't think they would be, though, if it kind of goes in line with the start of the game. The trailer's already planned, which actually goes in line with what Todd Howard said in his Game Slice interview with Jeff Keighley. So this guy's done his research if he is making this up. You know, I do want to say that. If this is true, like, I can see how it is, you know. Like, I can definitely see, you know, where he's got this information from, if it is. But, you know, if he hasn't, he's definitely done his research. And the trailer is actually already planned, what they say. It's going to have a survival mode as well, which is something that the test fans have really yearned for after seeing it in Fallout. And it's possibly going to be a PlayStation 5, the next Xbox launch title, is a possibility. I think that's very true. You know, if it is the home of the dragons, I've actually tried to combat this. You know, whether having a mass migration of dragons from Skyrim, from Tamriel over to Akavir, or having them already there. They've already been toying with that in the lore. Personally, I think that's another reason why I think this is bullshit, is because I think if they've done pre-production that they said they have, I think this would have already been decided, personally. And I'm actually going to make a separate video later on in the week where basically, maybe even after E3 actually, where I kind of delve into what Elder Six Akavir could actually represent and could actually be, because it's way too much to go into for this video, and this video's gone on long enough as it is. So let's go into the next point, which is the Elder Scrolls 7, which, just hearing about this, what I'm going to go into. When I was reading this, I had a smile on my face, if this is true. But if all of this is true, I actually can't wait to play Starfield now. Not for the fact that it's going to be a Bethesda game, because that's obviously going to be, because if it lines up with everything that I've read here, then, my god, then it's going to be really, interesting to see the rest of it. Going back to read the rest of this, I'm going to believe this way more if Starfield lines up with what I've seen here, because, my god, I mean, like, of what I'm about to read now is going to be, you know, all the Elder Scrolls fans, get fucking ready, you know, get ready for what I'm about to read, because it's so exciting. It's going to take place on the entire continent of Tamriel. It's going to have all 9 provinces in there. So that means Skyrim, Morrowind, Blackmarsh, Cyrodiil, Elsewhere, Valenwood, High Rock, Hammerfell, Somerset Isles. Is going to have all of the provinces of Tamriel and Cyrodiil as well. And, you know, all of them in there. It's going to be obviously then be the biggest Bethesda game ever. It says it's going to be Todd's magnum opus, which is a phrase... to be honest, I had to Google this phrase. I didn't know what the fuck this meant, which made me think of I'm an idiot. But basically, it means Todd Howard is seeing this as his masterpiece, as his final stroke, maybe as a point of maybe where he can retire afterwards. Which is said, if this leak is true, then I can believe the 5-year development cycle after Fallout 5, because I mean that's a lot of work to do to have the full content of Tamriel that they want to have in line with the lore as well. Which a lot of people I actually saw in this GameFAQs thread, saying the recent games haven't been in line. There's actually a great post on the Elder Scrolls subreddit, which I'm actually going to put in the link in the description, where you can go and see which actually proves that Skyrim and Oblivion and Morrowind have actually been in line with the actual dimensions of the map. So that point isn't actually true. So being having the full area of Tamriel, the full continent of Tamriel, a test fan's wet dream, and in that Bethesda goodness as well, just gets me so excited. It makes me want to put me in a cryogenic chamber to 2030 if this is actually the case. But the game will feature full destructibility, return to roots with advanced RPG mechanics, yet with actiony combat. Again, very exciting. The really emphasizing thing about full destructibility as well, which is going to be, you know, being able to, every building can be destroyed, every tree can be destroyed, and is going to be the most in-depth and customizable Bethesda game ever, that they say. And I also think that part of that makes me, having this area of destructibility kind of makes me think it's a little bit true, because we know that Todd Howard is a massive fan of Minecraft. He kind of brings that game up in examples a lot, and I think that's where the settlement system kind of really brought about it. You know, we see in that interview with Notch he did a long time ago now, I think actually around the release of Skyrim, where, you know, where we talked about, you know, Minecraft a lot. So we do know that he's a fan of Minecraft, and that could definitely be an inspiration. I also think as well, when he's talking about a lot of the stuff in this leak, that this is some of the stuff that makes me actually maybe... I do want to believe. I want to believe the Elder Scrolls 7 bit. I don't want to be the Elder Scrolls 6 bit. There's a lot of stuff in here to believe. There's a lot of stuff in here I think is bullshit. And there's definitely room to change for all of this stuff. Obviously, everything in here isn't going to be nailed on true. But we'll definitely have to see what's going to be happening. But the story is leaning as well at what they said, because this game probably isn't even in pre-production. It's just in the conceptual stages. Is leaning towards the idea of a Dwemer invasion on Tamriel, and will feature a lot of steampunk elements, flintlock pistols, all that kind of stuff. A Dwemer invasion on Tamriel, very interesting. The return of the Dwemer. Personally, I think then the Elder Scrolls 7, if this is true, could well be the final episodic Elder Scrolls game. You know, the final game of the timeline. So then we know how the world basically not ends, but you know, with the Dwemer come back. and maybe you can join them or join in the fight against them. That'd be really, really cool to play through. Really interested to see why they went away, and that's been basically, the guy calls it a gimmick of what's been kind of happening throughout the series, of being able to see these Dwemer, being able to hear about them. I think I'd be really, really interested to, to see them return and fight against them. So that's the stuff we've got from the Elder Scrolls. So the Elder Scrolls 7 is basically make me just absolutely fucking cremate in my pants. That gets me so excited to talk about that, if that's really the case. Again, you've really got to take this with a pinch of salt though, because of what has really been said, of Bethesda have confirmed and everything. Starfield, there's enough there to really believe in the ground that that's going to actually be happening this year, but the rest of it is going to be interesting. But we've got more to talk about. We're about 30 minutes into this video and we've still got more to talk about. Now let's get into the stuff that really, really, I don't want to say got me angry, but the lore nerd inside of me was actually fucking screaming. Basically, I hinted at this when they said the Starfield stuff, that they said they wanted to have like an elfish race, space elf kind of thing, to basically be a precursor to the Elder Scrolls series. Basically, they want to have connected universes. This has been something that has been talked about in theory, that Fallout could be the same world as Elder Scrolls, and that so much could have happened later on in the Fallout timeline that then going on to the Elder Scrolls. The Elder Scrolls universe itself, we know, is definitely thousands and thousands of years old. With the whole continent and everything, with the timeline and everything moving past, we know it's definitely a few thousand years old. So what they basically said in this is that they want it to be Fallout in the kind of like the near future, and then Starfield after Fallout, so maybe a few hundred years after Fallout, when we get more technology and stuff like that, and the world's kind of rebuilt itself. And then way into the distant future is going to be the Elder Scrolls series. That's what they wanted to say, and I really fucking I really don't want that to be the case. And then they say they wanted to use the time breaks in the Elder Scrolls lore as an excuse for this. I mean, for fuck's sake. I mean, that is, for me, that really, I don't want that to be. I like having them as separate entities. They originally started off as separate entities as well. Fallout was at a different studio when it first started off, and I really don't want that to be. I don't want them to mingle. I want them to stay separate. Maybe Starfield and Fallout, maybe they can work together, but I don't want the Elder Scrolls series to be a lot in the same world as the Fallout series. That just really gets me angry. Not for the fact that I prefer the Elder Scrolls series to the Fallout series. And, I love the Fallout series. I really enjoy those games. It's just that, God, just that idea in my head, I just don't like that at all. I would like them to stay separate. I like them having separate in my mind. I don't really want that. And just seeing the Lords maybe bringing these together, it just hurts me inside. And they said that the first of these little hints of bringing these universes interconnected came in Fallout 4 when the Brotherhood of Steel created Nerdroot. I liked that being an Easter egg, just a nice little wink for the Elder Scrolls creating the Nerdroot plan. But this section of the leaks here is what really made me think this was fan theory. This is what really made me think this is bullshit and made me squint my eyes at it. That apparently it's connected universes. I just don't personally see how they could do that in the lore. I don't think they need to do that in the lore. I think it's bullshit if they are going to do that in the lore. This is something that is as big as this. It's something that made me just think, like, maybe break the universes for me. I'd even go as far to say that, because I just think it's so fucking far-fetched and just completely nonsensical that would be the case. But hey, apparently, that basically having the Brotherhood of Steel created Nerdroot confirms that the Elder Scrolls series is in the same world as the Fallout series. I can maybe bridge it in my gap, say like if they're in the same series but they're basically on completely different solar systems, like Tamriel, the planet of Nern is in a completely different solar system than Earth, for instance, and basically Starfield, when we're going and exploring different universes or different solar systems and galaxies and stuff like that, we come across the island of Tamriel. That would be a lore kind of situation which I would accept. I wouldn't accept that, it being the same planet, being way into the future and using time breaks in the universe as a excuse. Don't like that at all. Don't like it at all. And I say that Starfield will have more Easter eggs about this and stuff like that. We'll have to wait and see about that. But I don't like that idea at all. I want you to let me know what you guys think as well in the description about the whole thing about, being in the same universe and everything. I don't like it. Don't like it. I hope they don't go down that route. So then another couple of tidbits before we get into the job post article is that the Evil Within 2 is planned for E3. They said they have a PlayStation VR version in the works as well. Who gives a shit? That's what I'm saying. Evil Within 2, not a great game in my opinion, so we'll have to wait and see about that. And they also said that Valve actually came to Bethesda about the paid mods idea, not Bethesda to Valve, which was actually the original idea. Which, yeah, you know, I actually kind of maybe forgot a little bit about the whole Skyrim paid mods debacle that happened. But yeah, Valve actually came to Bethesda for the idea, which actually makes sense. You know, for Valve to kind of make a bit money of the mods. Valve love the money. You know, we know that, and with the whole thing with Steam. So I personally think that could be true, to be honest. I think that's very much a truthful statement in there. But yeah, Starfield, there's a lot to be excited about of all these leaks. There's a lot of bullshit in here, like I said. The release window, I don't agree with that at all. I'm very much looking forward to play Starfield and then rereading these leaks to see what's going to be happening in the future. And maybe, you know, I maybe believe this a lot more if, you know, if they've got this whole thing about 5 separate quest lines and all that stuff in there. We'll definitely have to look about it. But let's get into the final thing in the video, which I'm just going to talk about briefly. I'm not going to go into it as much as I thought I would because of how long this video has gone on for. But basically, the job advert basically says that Bethesda Game Studios are making a freemium game. Some people are really flipping their heads about this because it's a job advert that basically says it's a game. They want a game performance manager that can work on monetization, design, strategy, and implementation, provide recommendation for in-game content and business models, and they want 5 years of experience in supporting AAA products. And this is going to the Montreal team. So this is not going to the heartland of the Bethesda team. So people are thinking this is going to be a AAA freemium game. This is what Starfield's going to be. It's going to be all online freemium game, you know, that we're basically loads of microtransactions and stuff like that. I personally don't think that's going to be the case. I do think there's going to be multiplayer elements to Starfield due to that thing that job advert that we had in the past. But this whole thing of it being a freemium game where, you know, where you're going to have all these different microtransactions in there, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's going to go into one of the AAA Bethesda releases. I think that's going to actually go into the phone games, like we had with lunchboxes and stuff like that in the Fallout Shelter mod thing, game on the phones. I think that's what it's going to go to, because this guy's joining the Montreal team, which they said, and is basically the team that's working on, you know, like the remasters and the phone cases and stuff like that. So going over there as a monetization implementation list, I think that makes sense. You know, I'm not getting all in my head, you know, about, you know, thinking that it's going to be for the main Rockville team, because I just don't see how they'll be able to do that and be able to maintain their image with a Starfield game or a main Bethesda style game. I just don't think that's going to be true. Whereas with the phone games, they're able to capitalize on a lot of money. There's a lot of games that make money through crates and stuff like that. Overwatch is, you know, making a shit ton of money from all that stuff. And also, you know, you look at other games as well that make a lot of money from it. That maybe in the similar areas of phone games, like Clash Royale makes a lot of money. You know, maybe the Elder Scrolls Legends, the card game, didn't really capitalize on that, but there's definitely room to make money there. I don't think that this is a bad deal, if I'm going to be honest with you, but we'll have to wait and see if that's the case. So, we've got there. Thank fuck, we've got to the end. You know, we've got through all of this stuff. There's a lot to digest here. If you want me to go more in depth on some of the different areas of this stuff, maybe I might make separate videos for all this different thing to really talk about a bit more and a bit more in depth, because I just think there's so much in here that I just wanted to really bring to your attention if you hadn't seen it already. But thanks all for watching. Let me know in the comments about any of the issues that we fucking talked about here. There's so much to talk about. The release window, the whole thing with Starfield, Elder Scrolls 6, Elder Scrolls 7, Fallout 5, E3 this year, the freemium game. Let me know what you think of all the stuff in there. Leave your comments below. I definitely will be in the comments of this video talking a lot about it, because I've got a lot of thoughts that I've been able to share throughout this video, and vent as well about the whole thing about the universe is connected. I mean, which just fucking gets my head. Ugh, I don't like that at all. Do not like that at all. So please make sure you check out some of the other videos. Check out the Game of Thrones video as well, in particular, which I talked about the possibility of there being a Game of Thrones game, which is looking more and more likely. And leave the like. Make sure you follow me on Twitter to see where I'll be talking about this more and more. And I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.